Alrighty, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Stats and Scars feature episode of the Shadow of the Script podcast. So appreciate you guys being in once again. We got the full crew back in it this Thursday. We got the medical guy joining us for injury analysis and the analyst for the statistical analysis, and of course, we're going to get to our college football winners and losers and some really fun projections for this upcoming weekend. October 12th is literally an onslaught for college football games. We're going to recap a couple of two primary games from last week and predict two more for this upcoming Sunday. And, of course, the DB list and maybe another little feature from the analyst in his segment. There's always something new every week. So a lot to look forward to in this episode. If you're a first-time listener, you can follow us at the Shadow of the Script across all platforms. And you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Make sure to subscribe and follow to those channels. Let's get rolling. All right, so last week we got a pretty busy week. Me and the analysts got after it. We got some good clips out, some good content. Hope everybody enjoyed that. We've been busy with the socials. Just released my power rankings this past Tuesday. Still got a 1A, 1B, but got some injuries to keep up with. So the medical guy, I'll hand it over to you, and I'll let you get going with the injury analysis of the week. Welcome back.
We'll get it going. I'll try to keep it short and sweet. There wasn't anything too crazy, but to get it started, Khalil Shakir was kind of a last-minute out for the Bills with an ankle injury. Just keep in mind there, especially with Josh Allen owners, it kind of showed that maybe he does need more than just one weapon. Very odd how their tight ends are supposed to be top-notch, and they didn't hardly get used in that game. Next, Xavier Legette. Shoulder injury for the Carolina Panthers. They just had a bad game, and I think with the Panthers, you're going to get those really boom or bust type games. So, and it all depends on who's the quarterback. We saw Andy Dalton come in, light it up for a couple weeks, and I think that's just what Andy Dalton kind of is right now. He may come out and gunsling it for 2 games and then just throw a dud. Next, Zach Moss, running back for the Bengals. So any of y'all that are looking at picking up running backs that may still be on that waiver wire, Chase Brown, good look at him. He also plays for the Bengals. He's put up some decent points. Next, Joe Mixon. It's looking like he's trending on still being out this week.
Really?
Yeah, they mentioned...
I thought he was going to play.
Yeah, well, I read on ESPN today that it's still kind of a day-by-day that he didn't really practice today, anything like that. I'm assuming it's leaning towards more like a high ankle thing than kind of what originally was kind of projected. So with those, running in a straight line is going to be easy. You're going to be able to get over that a lot faster, but the second you have to put your foot in the ground and turn a certain way, it's going to be pretty tough. And, if they're going to treat him like a bell cow, it's going to be really tough for him to be 100%. And with how they're playing and winning games right now, it's easier to say, hey, let's get this guy 100, 110% before we get him back too early. And then all of a sudden he's dinged up and you're stuck with, Dameon Pierce and Cam Akers who, haven't really picked up that slack or anything. I would say the other running back's name, but I have no clue how to pronounce his last name.
Yeah.
And I'm not even going to attempt. It starts with an O. His last name. And so next, Nico Collins,
it's like
hamstring
injury. It's like Ogawale or something.
Yeah, it's a mouthful for sure. But next, another Texans hit, Nico Collins with a hamstring injury. They are saying that he could be week to week. Like I've said before plenty of times on the podcast, those fast twitch receivers, stuff like that, hamstrings, can be great one day and, one step, one deep ball, one go route that you open it up a little bit more and then all of a sudden you're back to square one. And, same thing is with the running back position for the Texans. They've got some weapons. They've got, Stephon Diggs, who's the number one. They got Tank Dell, who hopefully starts getting more targets and gets more points and stuff like that. So they got weapons on the offense to make up for it. But that's I know a big hit for a lot of fantasy owners because he's kind of really stepped into that upper echelon of wide receiver ones. Next, Jonathan Taylor, he was an ankle injury. He was out this week. I would assume it didn't seem like in the reports that he's going to be out this week. He was kind of a last minute out for this week. So, everybody that wasted all their money on Trey Sermon at the FAAB waiver wire stuff, might see a tank in that production. So, next, we finally got some type of conclusion on Rashee Rice and his knee. Unfortunately, it showed that he did rupture that lateral collateral ligament, or that LCL, which is on the outside of your knee. And so it is going to be season ending. Luckily, it's not going to be necessarily ACL type return protocol where it's 8 to 12 months. I would assume it would be like a 4-month type of thing. So
good news.
It's just it's just tough with that, because seeing how it happened and how he was doing and everything like that, and then all the smoke in the air about whether it was ACL, whether he was good, whether it was just a bone bruise, and then it comes out that he actually did tear something that's going to require surgery. Next is Davion A-Chain. Unfortunately, this guy's kind of ending up in that category where hurt guys stay hurt. And it seems like with him, it just seems like always something pops up. This week he left the game with a concussion. Still doubtful that he plays this week. And obviously being on that team with, the word and the unfortunate popularity around concussions with the Dolphins, I would assume they're going to play that as safe as they possibly can. But if you've got Raheem Mostert in one of those leagues as a backup or anything like that, look for him to get more of a starting role. Even though when they were together, they both got a lot of targets and a lot of carries. Next, Aaron Jones. He was banged up pretty early in the game with a hip injury and came out. So the report today read that he's still working through it, trying to get back and everything. It's just with the same as the Texans, as with the Vikings, they're figuring out how to win games. They're playing very well. They've got a lot of good weapons. So it would just be interesting to see if they're going to rush him back or anything like that. And then the final one, which was kind of the big hit, I guess, would be Derek Carr. Report came out that he does have an oblique injury, and that he could be out, 3-4 plus weeks. Weird thing about obliques is, and it was weird kind of how he injured it, because it looked like he got hit more so. Normally with those oblique injuries, it's going to be, crazy, type of twist or rotation that injures it. Not necessarily, trauma to that area. Tricky things with those is that with that oblique is literally anything hurts it. Waking up, getting out of bed kills it. Sneezing, coughing, laughing, it just hurts because it's in that abdominal area, and you basically use it with everything you do. So that's going to be the weird part. And the tricky part is, before you can start just doing a bunch of stuff, like, you've got to be almost rid of every bit of pain. And so, like I said, with him being a quarterback and throwing and turning and twisting, I'd expect that to be a 4 to 6 weeks. And even, 6 weeks, he's just getting back, and you'll be able to see, like, some of the hesitation with having to do stuff. Well, that's a big hit, especially for that Saints offense. Wouldn't necessarily suggest going and picking up either of their backups, but if you are just struggling to find a quarterback, it looked like Spencer Rattler's going to get the start. I know he looked good in preseason this year, and obviously his collegiate career wasn't awful. And so that's just going to be I would say the biggest hit of the injuries this week. So that kind of wraps up my injury list of this week. Do y'all have any that I missed or y'all want to add or ask questions about?
The only one I would add to is there was a latest update on Nico Collins that said he was advanced to day-to-day rather than week-to-week, just from what I read.
Okay.
So good news for Nico Collins managers, but I was going to mention hamstrings more than anything scare me to death with receivers.
Especially receivers.
Yeah. It lingers, and I would honestly take what the medical guys said to heart, because yes, they do say day-to-day, but honestly, with a hamstring, it just lingers, like you mentioned. So I would consider him week-to-week and just be cautious with him for sure. But I'm glad you covered the Derek Carr part, because not a lot of people are going to think 4 to 6 weeks. They're probably going to say 2 or 3 games with an oblique injury. So looking long term for the Saints, and it could damage their playoff implications. That's all I think, though, right?
And especially with how they've really implemented the deep ball and the deep routes is like, you saw some of the throws he was trying to make in this last game, and it's like, to really open up like that, I mean, that's just going to be tough on him. And I guess I forgot to mention, but with those obliques is that it's not just like one motion hurts it. Stretching it and contracting it is gonna really cause a lot of pain. Any type of side bending rotation like that, and it could be to the opposite side, but just where those muscles sit, kind of on your side, kind of, I guess, right above your hip is where it sits, and so just any type of motion really can really bother it and aggravate it. So it's going to be interesting to see. But yeah, that kind of wraps up my injury list.
The Analyst, do you have any final comments on that segment before we go to DB list?
No, I was just gonna say that the Nico one didn't look terrible. Like, he ran off the field, he wasn't like hobbling, and then he was like in good spirits, like walking around the medical tent afterwards. So I almost feel like it was precautionary, but I don't know. Especially, it's good news that Jared just said that they moved it to like day to day.
Okay, good deal. All right. Well, let's move on into the DB list. The down bad candidates of the week. Our favorite time.
List.
What we got
today?
All right, so I have 3 on here. I'll just go ahead and give one. That way I don't steal anybody else's, and then I'll go through my last 2 after y'all get through y'all's. So my first one is going to be from the Texans and the Bills game. The end of the game clock management, play management by the Buffalo Bills. I'm sure y'all saw that, but they're next to the end zone. There's, everybody's got their timeouts left, and like, I understand, like, yes, you want to try to get out of the end zone and stuff like that, and at least give your punter a little bit of room. But I mean, they opened it up with two straight pass plays, and then it's like, all right, well, we have to try to pass it on 3rd down. And they wasted essentially no clock. And then your punter's having to punt from the end zone. And you're giving it back to the Texans with, obviously, C.J. Stroud. He seems to have that gene, that clutch gene. And, they get it in range for, Jared's favorite player, Kaimi Fairbairn. And, he's turned into one of these top kickers right now. And I think he actually leads the league right now with like 8 50-plus yarders or something like that. Like, him and Brandon Aubrey are very close. And so it's just very odd, and it's just kind of like one of those where it's like, anybody that's ever, played Madden before can figure out, like, hey, maybe we don't need to do this. And like, you have someone who's very dynamic in the backfield that can, get out of the pocket, even do the whole BS Giants thing that one time where they QB sneak it for 4 yards ahead, and at least you do something. But, they just aired it out for 2 straight plays, and it wasn't even close. And so they wasted, I think they wasted like 13 seconds. And it was like, well, like, what the hell? And so that was my first candidate for the DB list. I'll let whoever wants to go next.
The Analyst?
Yeah, mine's kind of interesting. Well, I'll save this one, but I was going to say the New York Jets.
Oh, yeah.
I got up on Sunday and watched, like, I didn't realize this was a London game when we predicted it, so I got up and started watching it. First off, the sad part, we'll just go from sad to sadder to saddest. The sad part is Tyron Smith looks old. And I'm really upset about that. I've always loved watching Tyron Smith just dominate people on the tackle position, and he just he's hitting his limit, and it's pretty obvious. He was missing a lot of blocks. He kind of looked like he couldn't keep up, and a lot of times I don't know if that's because they were playing the Vikings defense. That's confusing, but he's good enough to know, where to be.
Yeah, unfortunately.
I think the sadder part is Aaron Rodgers looks not only bad, but he also looks very old. Like, I don't know what it is, and he just does not look good. On top of that, like, clearly he's got Nathaniel Hackett in a chokehold, because, like, there's that video that came out, and he's over there, like, trying to get the play, and he just, like, he's like, screw it, I'll call my own. Like, and then the saddest part is all the stuff that's coming out about Robert Salah. You know, he got fired, and then it came out, you know, everybody's like, oh, we kind of knew that was coming. And then after he got fired, it came out, he's like, well, he demoted Nathaniel Hackett from calling plays like 5 minutes before he got fired. So, you know, everybody's kind of joking about how Aaron Rodgers is going to deny that he had anything to do with that. The owner, I think it's Woody Johnson or whatever his name is, came out and said, like, oh, you know, this was my decision. Aaron Rodgers doesn't have anything to do with it. It's pretty clear that Aaron Rodgers is, like, holding that entire organization hostage. Because now they're going to go get Devontae Adams, because that's what Aaron Rodgers wants. Salah's defense was not in a bad area. Like, it was one of the best defenses over, like, the last 2 or 3 years. It's just that Aaron Rodgers didn't like him. That's the whole thing. And there's been reports that came out for the last couple weeks. So the question really is, who does Aaron Rodgers like? You know, I mean, he doesn't even like Garrett Wilson, so I'll stop there. But the New York Jets look like a dumpster fire right now, and they were the team that a lot of people were picking to win the Super Bowl. So
yeah, idiotically, and the funny part about it too is Robert Salah had I thought this was America exit to the building, basically. You know, just escorted by everybody. I thought this was America.
Didn't even get to address the team.
Yeah, I know.
Oh yeah.
He's like, hey, you're out, leave. And what's weird too is Woody Johnson was formerly, I think, the ambassador to like the UK, which is just weird to me. But yeah, my DB list candidate is Brady Cook from Missouri. He said before the game that I think our speakers are louder than Kyle Field, and I remember talking about it on my previous pod episode. I was like, dog, like, you're expecting that thing to go blaring in practice. What you're not expecting is 110,000 fans to show up to Kyle Field at 11 o'clock in the morning ready to prove something. And when Connor Wegman stepped out there and did his thing, and they couldn't get shit moving on the ground or in the air on the Missouri side, and you get bodied like that, 41. Technically, it was 41-7. And I'll do an additional DB list for the coach from Missouri who kicked the field goal at the last second to, I guess, make the score. I don't even know. The game was over. Even the commentators were like, what's going on here? So Brady Cook and the head coach from Missouri, man, and the receiver that got blanketed by Will Lee II. So all around DB list for old Missouri Tigers.
Yeah. If there was one place that I would just not give fuel to the fire to, it would be Kyle Field. I feel like that's probably the last place I'd want to do that to. That would be one of those. Be like, a lot of fine, established young gentlemen and ladies and stuff.
They're
like
respectable.
that. So love them to death.
The other thing that he said was, first off, they think that like Elko said it after the game. They were asking him about the blanket. And Elko was like, we had nothing to do with that. Why don't you go ask the Missouri coach?
Yeah.
Like, we don't know what you're talking about. And then on top of that, the Missouri coach was like, before the game, he was talking through their depth chart, and he's like, yeah, they've got this quarterback up here. Like, I guess he's going to play whatever antic this is. And then after the game, he got on there. He's like, yeah, you know, Connor Wingman's he's a damn good quarterback. It's like, dog, you got boat raced, and now you got to eat all that shit too. So
Yep.
It's pretty bad. It was bad.
Did we steal your other two, medical guy? I'll give you the floor for those.
No. My last two, and I don't know if you saw some of this, but if y'all watched the Miami Hurricane Cal game and the video and picture of Michael Irvin on all fours sitting at the goal line, and I'm just like, bro, like I'm all about my sports. I'm all about my Astros, my Dallas Stars, my Dallas Cowboys, all of them. I am never so just out of this world about them that I'm going to be on all fours barking, just back arched, ass up, like just begging for my team to score on the sidelines ever. I was like, bro, please just get up.
That was
Please
a different
get up.
level.
Yeah, I was like, yikes, this is a little embarrassing. And then,
I commented on Twitter, I said, I've never went full fucking quad for, a football team in my life. And
and that's where you then look at the accusations about Michael Irvin just being ripped out on coke. Just like, and then just wakes up for like, whatever first take or whatever he's on the next day, just ready to go. I'm like, yo, that guy, he's built different, or he's built different, And but my next one, I don't know if any of y'all saw this or if any of y'all watched the first one, the Joker movie. The one with Joaquin Phoenix.
See the first one.
Yeah, the first one was pretty good, pretty interesting. But the second one, no, I didn't watch it, but I've read a bunch of reviews. And my wife and I were actually talking about like going and watching it the other night. And I was like, yeah, and so I was, scrolling, X or whatever, and I'm reading just like all these hellacious reviews. I'm like, what the hell? And then like read this one about it being a musical. And I go look it up. And like on IMDb, says it's a musical. And I'm like, what? And so I started just reading about some of the scenes and some of the stuff in it. And I'm like, hey, Heather, we're not watching this. This is a musical. And she was like, oh, hell no, we're not going to watch that. And there's been all these reports come out that, like, the director, like, it's one of those kind of like the coach from Mizzou, like, kind of had to eat crow kind of thing. Like, oh, yeah, he's a damn good quarterback, whatever. The director kind of came out and it was like, no, we meant to make a show like this. It's not supposed to be, like, by the masses. And I'm like, shut the hell up, dude. Your shit sucked. Like,
and, like, that was ass.
And there was even, like, videos of, like, when it was first premiered at whatever, awards thing they showed. Like, Joaquin Phoenix, like, looked over at Lady Gaga and was like, that shit was bad. Like, you can read his mouth. He was like, that shit was terrible. Like, this is the worst thing I've ever done. And I was like, oh my gosh. Because, like, the first one was really good. And then the second one, just to do that and have the director act like that, I'm like, oh, God. Same old with these directors kind of thing. So
this Joker just crashes out the whole movie.
Yeah, and there's some very questionable scenes in it. So, watch it at your own risk. Don't take your kids. But that wraps up my DB list. Do y'all have any more to add?
I do not.
I've got one more, and I'll make it fast. Right. The other one I had was what Jared said, like all of college football, especially Missouri and Bama. We already went over Missouri, but the one I have is us. We're on the DB list because I read a tweet this weekend, and it was from a Eagles account. Go figure. And he was talking about Ashton Gentry from Boise State. And he was like, just give this dude the Heisman right now. And then he followed up this tweet with being like, do you know how good you got to be to make Boise State must-watch TV? And then I was like, what are you talking about? Do you remember when we were kids, like the Kellen Moore days, the 11-1, 12-0 Boise State offensive? And then so everybody in this Twitter is like, yo, you are showing your age bad right now. So I started thinking, I'm like, are we getting old to where people on Twitter don't remember like the electric, what Statue of Liberty play to beat, I think it was Oklahoma.
Yeah, in the Fiesta Bowl.
I was like, dang, we are getting old.
Absolutely.
That was not that long ago, and it's starting to show like we're entering the age where people only remember like, maybe Jameis Winston in the 2014 Florida State team. Like we're getting past the days of like where we're talking to our kids about like, Daddy, do you remember who Tim Tebow was? And it's like, yeah, that was like 2005.
Yeah. The deepest quarterback anybody can go back to their memory and find these days is Kirk Cousins with Michigan State. They're like, oh, do you remember Kirk Cousins days? I'm like, dog.
The worst one always to me is when people bring up Case Keenum and they're like, yeah, Case Keenum's an ass. And I'm like, brother.
He was a U of H god.
Go turn on his U of H tape, and you will see a guy that carried the boats. Now he did play like 10 years of college, but there's a reason
Yeah.
that his records will never be broken.
Yeah.
I'm like, this guy was Patrick Mahomes of Houston. He was slinging it.
I had a roommate in college that was like obsessed with Case Keenum for that reason. So, anyway, that's all I got.
Yeah.
And I'm older than y'all, so trust me, I feel old every day. Every day.
All right, well, let's recap these two games from this previous Sunday. Me and Ryan kind of covered the predictions of this leading up to it, but we had leading off the Minnesota Vikings defeating the New York Jets 23-17 in the London game, which, by the way, this London game was not even advertised to be a London game. Nobody that I talked to knew that there was a London game, which was odd because usually you get, just advertised as shit on every platform saying this game's in London, you got to watch this game in London, get up. And true football fans were up from 8 a.m. on Saturday watching College GameDay up until midnight football with Miami and Cal, to the next morning to 9:30 with the London game, to 1 a.m. with the Cowboys and Pittsburgh Steelers. That was me. I watched every bit of it.
Hand up.
Throughout the So
I worked college football, and I watched it.
Yeah.
Went and worked it, watched it, woke up the next morning and watched it. So, yeah, I'm right there with you.
So, yeah, exactly. So, Minnesota Vikings defeat the Jets 23-17. Aaron Rodgers throws 3 interceptions. They moved to 2-3. The Vikings moved to 5-0. I'm now I should be put on the DB list for betting against the Vikings. So, the analyst, let's start with you, and then we'll work to the medical guy, and I'll finish out your recap of this game.
Yeah, so first off, I had them winning, the Vikings winning 34-10. I said last week that I did not think the train stopped here, and it didn't. What's funny is Jared was talking about the London game. I had no idea this was a London game. I actually woke up Sunday morning after watching the full college football slate, and me and my wife slept in a little bit, and so we were like, hey, let's get up, and, we were going to go to church, and then so we're like, let's just watch church from home. And so I turned on our TV, football. And it was like 9:30, and I turned on the TV, and I see the Jets and the Vikings game on, and I was like,
Lord, forgive me, for I have sinned.
Yeah. So I was like, oh, it's a London game? So I did the right thing, and we watched our church, and then I turned the game on. But anyway, as I said in the DB list, the Jets look really bad and concerning for all the reasons I said. Tyron Smith their team kind of looks old. They got 2 good running backs they can't figure out. Aaron Rodgers looks like he's just disgusted with everything Jets related. But, the Vikings defense won them this game. There at the end, 3 interceptions. The Jets or the Vikings offense finally stalled a little bit. And Rodgers tried to put up a comeback, and the Flores had him rattled, man. I mean, 3 interceptions from Aaron Rodgers is a very rare occurrence, and having that maybe is because they were jet lagged, whatever. But the Vikings defense is legit. I stand by that, and I think the Vikings end up, they have a really good chance of winning that AFC North.
Yeah, I agree. The medical guy.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Ryan on this. I will give props to the Jets defense because the Vikings offense was rolling and just kind of came to a little bit of a halt there against the Jets. But we got to give credit where credit's due. They do have a great defense. They got great DBs on the outside and a great front seven. And then just to touch on it again about Aaron Rodgers, I mean, he, we see some of these older quarterbacks getting into their older prime years of their career, like your Kirk Cousins, your Flaccos, your Andy Daltons, all that. And you see them, and it seems like, they kind of identify as like, hey, I'm going to be part of this young crowd. Like, you see Joe Flacco joke about, Anthony Richardson's mom is, 9 days younger than him or something like that. And,
yeah.
Kirk Cousins with, the Kirk O'Chains type stuff. Andy Dalton's, coming into a different zone, growing the red beard out. Just looking more youthful and, they appreciate it. And then you see, Aaron Rodgers is a total opposite end of the spectrum and just is, old man yells at cloud type thing about everything.
Yeah.
And it's just maybe because they're more. I mean, Kirk Cousins in a starting role, but maybe because he's the starter and the guy that there's less pressure or whatever. But I agree with Ryan. It just like it doesn't seem like anything is, anything goes right or goes wrong. He's just upset, and just seeing how how he played that game was just brutal. Now I will say that the offense looks abysmal. I mean, it looks boring. I mean, you have Breece Hall and then Braylon Allen, like you said, are great running backs, and you're seeing Breece Hall go 2 games in a row with like sub 40 yards.
Just putting up duds.
Yeah, and then you see like Allen Lazard, finding his zone, but then like Garrett Wilson getting like 21 targets, but half of them are 4-yard stops, and it's just like. Honestly, it looks like a Kellen Moore 3rd down and 9 call, where it's like we're gonna run 5 curl routes and we're gonna see who's open.
Short of the sticks.
It just looks boring and just vanilla. And so it's like you've got these weapons, like open it up a little bit, dog. And so that's just kind of my recap. Is like, the Jets. They just look boring, and then the Vikings, they may be something to mess with. I know they're 5-0, but just for some reason, it feels like they're going to dud out. I don't know why, but they just do things, and it's just the Vikings right now. The last few years, it's just the Vikings. They always do this to where it's like they're really good.
Yeah.
Did it a couple years ago with Kirk Cousins, where it's like they were 5-0, and then it's like dud. So I don't know. I'm not completely sold on them, but they are a very good team. And yes, I do think they can mess around with that NFC North.
Yeah, I'm in the same category with you. That's probably why I betted against them the last 2 weeks. Metaphorically betted against them. And I was kind of focused on the good with Minnesota here because, this was the first time that they, like Ryan mentioned, dudded on offense. And you saw, Sam Darnold kind of struggled to throw over 200 yards, but at the same time, Justin Jefferson's getting 6 catches for almost 100 yards, and they're still not completely healthy on that side of the ball. They lost Aaron Jones, who I think he had or one of them had 14 carries for 30 yards. So they just weren't really efficient on the ground. But what got all their points for them was the Jets' turnovers. So that vanilla offense kind of won the Vikings the game. I really think I was correct about this game, the outcome. It just didn't. The wind didn't fall in the Jets' direction, but the Vikings played bad enough offensively for the Jets to easily take this game. But once again, you have Brian Flores, his defense, with a bunch of no-names, is just absolutely grilling their opposing offenses. But, yeah, I mean, I have him as my 1A in the power rankings, but I'm still there's something about those other teams, the AFC North or the NFC North, specifically just the Packers, that I think they're better coached, more just than offensively, and I think they have better talent, and I think they'll catch up eventually. And of course, you have the Lions, who came off a bye week. Kind of people are forgetting about them. I just think it's a long road for the Vikings, and no teams really stay undefeated. And we saw the Saints already dud out. I hope it doesn't happen to the Vikings, but I can totally see it happening. All right, well, we'll move on to the Houston Texans versus the Bills recap. The Bills lose this game to the Texans 20-23. Like we talked about earlier on the DB list candidates, you had Josh Allen and the Bills offense at their own 3-yard line, running 3 straight pass plays. Josh Allen went 9 of 30 passing the ball in this game without Khalil Shakir. The ground game looked pretty decent for the Bills, but Texans were without Joe Mixon and still find a way to scrap up this game, kind of despite C.J. Stroud's struggles late in the game, kind of handing the ball over to the other team, which the Bills should have capitalized on. But I don't know. It was just a back-to-back, I would argue, back-to-back duds for the Bills. I would be concerned. I'm kind of regretting that they're still in my power rankings. I probably should have put the Commanders. I'm just, for some reason, not sold on them. But in this game, I'll let the analyst kind of bounce off what I said and give his recap of it.
Yeah, I had the Bills winning 24-17, but this also didn't account for Josh Allen probably throwing the worst game he's ever thrown. I do think the Texans are for real. I've said on this podcast before that I thought the Colts had a good chance when I said they were one of the 1 and 2 teams that could come around, but I also said that the Ravens were probably the most likely, and it's kind of showing out that, the Colts couldn't really figure it out, but the Ravens are winning games that, are stealing games, for the lack of better terms, on Sunday. That was insane. But anyway, back to the Texans. I think they're going to win this division once Mixon and Nico get healthy. They're just a powerhouse in offense with Bobby Slovic, calling their plays. But I will say this: if Stroud can't do that against good teams, you can't, throw that interception that he threw and then fumble the ball. He got lucky because, going back to what Jacob was saying earlier, the play calling right there at the end was horrific. I don't know how McDermott still has a job after all of these, big game mishandlings. You go back to the couple years ago in the AFC Championship last year. It always just comes down to coaching for the Bills. It always comes down to, when they lose these kind of games, it always comes down to a coaching decision or a play call that doesn't make any sense. So, in terms of Josh Allen, I don't think anything's wrong with him. I think he's having, when you get Josh Allen to calm down, that's probably when he's the best. But you can tell right now he's just flustered and having to do a ton right now. And I just think they need to go get, I think Amari Cooper's probably the best fit for the Bills. I think Adams would work well with Allen too, but Cooper's more of a streaker. I think they're both route technicians. Both of them are great route runners, but I think Cooper's got more of a long ball game to him. And people think he's older, but he's really not. I think he's 28.
He's 29, I believe.
29, and he's still got it in him. I think that would solve a lot of the Bills' problems, is that you can't just have Allen throwing to Kincaid, because clearly him and Keon Coleman are not clicking the way you want them to, and it's still early in the season, but the Bills don't have a lot to afford if they want to go on and play in the playoffs. So that's what I got from that game. I'll pass it on and keep it short.
Yeah, no, I agree with a lot of what y'all said. Very poor clock management there at the end. We touched on that. The Texans, to me, obviously they're for real, and to be honest, I think C.J. Stroud is covering up a lot for that offense. I think they can be very good, obviously. But if you just look at some of their games, it's very weird wins, very, just odd things that happen. Now with some of these injuries, it's going to be interesting to see. I think Bobby Slovic obviously can call a good game. There's just some things that happen throughout the game that I'm like, what the hell are they doing?
I agree.
Let it go. And with the Bills, I mean, you touched on it great, and we brought it up, and specifically last year, that when the offensive coordinator really just gave the offense a Benadryl and told them to chill out, just an absolute Xanax, and said hey, we don't need you to be Superman, we just need you not to just screw up. That's when Josh Allen is almost surgical. And just looking at that stat line, and we can go into that on a Saturday script one day about the dude was 9 for 30. Yeah. That's awful. And we could talk about whatever other quarterback you wanted to, but if another quarterback we know that may or may not play on the team we cheer for went 9 for 30, he might be sent on the first plane to a different country the next day. Right. And
you would have people with pitchforks calling for his job.
Yeah, they would start a GoFundMe to pay the rest of his salary off so we could get rid of him. And to see that stat line, I think it also does show that hey, there's still only one Mahomes out there, dude. Yeah. Josh Allen is great. He can do a lot of phenomenal things. But his best weapon, theoretically, is Khalil Shakir, and he was out, and you saw how this offense was just anemic. Now, James Cook had a great game, of course, but he couldn't find weapons to get it to. And so obviously don't think it's panic mode or anything, but I 100% agree with Ryan. I think they're missing just one weapon that could just take people away from being up on the line and being up close to take James Cook receiving out of the game, because we've seen when that's kind of taken away from them, they kind of stutter a little bit. And so, you know, an Amari Cooper, you know, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, something like that. They lost Gabe Davis from last year, who was literally that. And I think Jared had him on his team, his fantasy team, and like he would go like 3 games without, you know, catching a ball, and then all of a sudden have 2 games where it's like, you know, 6 for 7 for 179 yards and three touchdowns, and they're all bombs. And so it just seems like they're just missing like just one thing right there just to get that defense a little bit, you know, out of the box and kind of thing. But, you know, props to the Texans. They're winning games right now, and they're looking like one of the top teams in the AFC right now. So props to them.
Yeah, and the only thing I'll say about this game too is that I kind of gave a little bit already, but to what Ryan's point is, Amari Cooper being a good fit to the Bills, I do agree with that. I think he's also the best contract you can absorb, because I think the Browns are they're already willing to pay Deshaun what he's being paid. So what's more to hurt than to, you know, pay for just a little bit more of Amari Cooper's renegotiated contract? So I think he is the best fit going in there.
He's very affordable. That's kind of my point. And that's what I mean with Keon Coleman. I don't think he's ready to be a 1. You know, he needs a season or 2 if you're going to make him that. It's kind of like a Jameson Williams situation where it's like everybody's been hyping him up forever, and you're finally starting to see some light from him. So I just don't think Keon Coleman is like the answer for where the Bills are currently, because they are on the brink of, you know, trying to make that playoff push. So
yeah, and the division's wide open currently.
Yeah, especially with the Jets throwing duds out there constantly.
Yeah.
So
all right, well, let's get into our predictions for this upcoming week. We'll lead the first prediction off with one very, very exciting team and another team that's kind of gone on a roll now that they figured out a formula. We got the Washington Commanders at the Baltimore Ravens. The Commanders are 4-1 headed into this one, first in the NFC East, and you got the Ravens, who just beat the Bengals in a high-scoring affair. They're at 3-2. Game time 1 p.m. Eastern time, and the spread at 6.5 favoring the Baltimore Ravens. I'll give my quick projection first, and I'll give it over to the medical guy. So here's what I have for this one: short and sweet, simple. Ravens, I got them winning 31-28. I think this is one of those high-scoring affairs. Lamar's defense, I think they hold their ground late against Jaden Daniels. Both QBs have looked great so far. I think Lamar's playing at an MVP level more so than he was last year.
That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And we won't even get into who should have won last year. But I think this is one of those games where, like, Jaden Daniels is playing like Lamar, and Lamar is just going to come in here, and I think he's just going to show him, hey, what's up? Like, you're a rookie.
I'm still that guy.
I'm still that guy. I am the dual threat quarterback. Lamar needs to make a statement in this game, and not to mention, you know, the Commanders, they look great, man. I don't have any problem with them. I just don't think that they come out with a win against this one. But the medical guy, what is your prediction?
Yeah, so my prediction, I have a little bit higher scoring, but same, you know, result. I have 38-35 Baltimore. I think this is going to be a shootout. It's shown, and even last year with Sam Howell at the helm, like the Commanders aren't afraid to sling it, aren't afraid to get into a shootout. I was very impressed. Now it was against, I guess, the Browns, but it's 2 games in a row the Commanders have done well on defense. And so that's going to be the biggest kicker for them, is that, you know, if they can do well on defense, they're going to be a really good team, and they've shown that they are a really good team. You know, just super impressed with Jaden Daniels. I think this is going to be a shootout. I think this is going to be a game where, you know, at the end, like, both quarterbacks are going to be like, respect. Like, because
Jersey swap.
Yeah, exactly. Because they both those quarterbacks are playing at an insane level. And the Ravens have this history of having like this really stout defense, and it's just like, we keep saying this, but then you look game after game, and it's like, I don't know, they're kind of getting roasted. And like even with, you know, obviously the Dallas game where they were up so big, I mean, not to bring that up, but like at the end of the game, like the Ravens knew what Dallas was doing. They were going to throw the ball every time, and like had no answer. And so I think this could ultimately come down to like whichever team gets one stop, just one stop, and that's going to win the game for them. And so that's kind of my prediction right there, short and sweet, 38-35 Baltimore.
Already.
Yeah, I got the same score as Jared in this one, 31-28. I got the Ravens, and I think it is high scoring. I do think that the Commanders are good, but if you go look at their resume right now, they really haven't beaten anybody or played a solid defense so far. The ones I can name off the top of my head are they played Arizona, they've played Cleveland, they've played Cincinnati. That's 3 out of the 5. I'm kind of forgetting another one.
Yeah.
They just haven't really. Yeah. They haven't really played anybody yet that has been, a top or or leaning to the top.
They played the Bucks and lost big time to them. I remember that, 37-20 or something.
I do think their offense is good, but if you get into the numbers on their defense is not good. On top of that, us Dallas fans have witnessed how bad Dan Quinn's defense can be against good teams. So I would expect if you have any Ravens, I know Hunter is our fantasy football guy, but I would start every Raven you have. I do think that the Commanders I could see this being a higher scoring game than what I'm saying, but I do think that the Commanders defense is not that great. So I'm going with the Ravens winning 31-28.
All right, the Ravens across the board. Moving on to our next game, we'll try and keep it as because we love, of course we're fans of one of these teams, but we've got the Dallas Cowboys against the Detroit Lions. The spread has a 3.5 favoritism towards the Detroit Lions. The Cowboys just coming off a huge win in Baltimore in Pittsburgh, playing 1 a.m. football with a clutch last-minute touchdown from Dak Prescott to move them up to 3-2. The Lions coming off a bye week, they're fresh, they're healthy for the most part, and at 3-1, we get yet another Tom Brady x Dallas Cowboys game of the week matchup. This is the third or fourth one already this year. So my short and sweet predictions here are I've got the Lions winning this game 31-23, so I think the offense for the Lions just kind of rolls through Dallas on the ground. Yeah. Like I said in the power rankings last week, I think the Lions have the best running back committee in the NFL. They've got a bell cow, and they got a scat back who literally is showing he is a 4-down back potentially. And I just think it's going to be too much for the ground attack, which Dallas, to be fair, has had 2 weeks back-to-back of playing really good against the run. I just think they're too injury-riddled for Ben Johnson to screw it up scheme-wise. And so I just think it's going to be too much for Dallas to keep up offensively. Not to say that they'll play bad. I just don't think they're going to be able to keep up. It is at home. We're 3-0 on the road, 0-2 at home. Maybe they snap that streak. It would be a huge win if Dallas got this one. I just think they got their one last week. Don't see it happening this week. The medical guy.
Yeah, I almost agree with every bit of that. I think I agree with all of it except the score. My prediction, I was really surprised to see this line at 3.5. I was expecting it to be like a 7, like a full touchdown, maybe even close to a 9. My prediction is going to be 28-21 Detroit. Same thing. I just don't think we have the guys to match up on defense to their offense. Yeah. And like you said, we stole one this week, right? We definitely stole that one, and we were essentially handing Pittsburgh a W, and just last second took it back. And I think the only way Dallas comes out on top is if Dak Prescott plays perfect.
Hero ball for sure.
Yeah, and it's not going to be like, hey, he has an okay game. He's got to play perfect. I think we're going to have to put over 100 rushing, and he's going to have one of those 300 plus yard games, 4 TDs for this game to be like to be even in the realm of us being able to win. Hopefully, now like I agree with Jared. I don't think they'll play necessarily bad, but I just think the Lions are going to come out after the whole bullshit last year about how they lost, how we beat them and everything. They're going to be bulletin board material, and I think they're going to try to get up quick. And Mike McCarthy is going to have to reach in deep into the bag of like, hey, we've got to keep up with this.
That bag is not deep. That bag is not deep, brother.
Well, then he's got to just flip the play call sheet over and get to the good that little section of good plays that he has.
Fourth quarter
that we've seen him call. When we're down 31-13, and then all of a sudden we're within one score. We need that that 4x4 inch square on the bottom of his play sheet and be like, hey. Or we need Dak to just take the headset out of his helmet and be like, guys, I got this. And so, like, full wristband on, like, hey, we're going this right here. Everybody, let's go.
Yeah, so, I need him to pull an Aaron Rodgers. That's basically
Yeah, flip the bird to Mike McCarthy and be like, this is my team now, brother. Like,
well, I'll follow up all that with I agree with everything that was just said. The Detroit line is low because we're home dogs. This is at Dallas, a team on the road. They're not going to give them that 7-point line unless it's like Detroit versus Carolina, something like that. So, I actually think this game is not going to be close. I have Detroit winning 31-21. But I think it's going to be like a mercy touchdown at the end. The reason I think that is everything that Jared and Jacob just said. I just think our defense is not up to par right now. We're severely injured. Our offense is just kind of abysmal because we didn't prepare correctly in the off season, and that's been a big pain point going forward. Everybody's talking about the CeeDee Lamb Dak controversy that was completely frauded. That was not, everybody was saying that CeeDee Lamb was saying, oh, good ball, Dak, but he was over there talking. First off, Dak was pissed. That's the most pissed I've ever seen him during a game. But he was. CeeDee Lamb was talking to Dak like jump ball, my bad. We should have gone jump ball, and Dak was just not having it. That was all of it. I don't think there's any controversy there. I think CeeDee Lamb is fine. It's just that I think Dak's getting fed up with how some of this has gone throughout the year, and I think that's totally valid. But bottom line, I don't think this game is close because Detroit is coming off a bye. They're going to be, rejuvenated, feeling good. Dallas just came off an emotional win against the Steelers, and I just don't think Detroit has forgotten about that whole debacle last year that Dallas basically stole from them. So I would expect Detroit, the first thing they do is to send Skipper out there, their sixth offensive lineman, and declare him eligible just to make a point. And then Dan Campbell is going to, in terms of mascots, it's Cowboys versus Indians, and our Cowboys are down on one knee trying to reload the revolver, and somehow the Indian has just released a pack of lions. That's how this game is going to go. So expect the Lions to really basically eat our carcass alive right there in the middle of the Wild
scalp
West.
Us.
Yeah. So that's what I think is going to happen. I don't think this game is going to go very well, and the only way it does is Dak puts on his cape and plays absolutely hero ball, where he throws, like Jacob said, 450, 70% completion rating, 4 touchdowns. He's going to have to spread the ball, which is possible against the Detroit Lions defense. They're not good coverage guys, but when all you have to do is bracket CeeDee Lamb, we're in trouble. So
watch out.
That's my
I'm expecting that Dan Skipper thing to come out, and then immediately 75-yard TD run from Jahmyr Gibbs. It's
they're gonna do it like somebody died, and they get the automatic delay of game. So they start off first and 15. They're gonna make sure the ref calls it out. They're gonna make sure the ref calls it out. Number 70 is reported eligible, and then they're gonna let the delay of game happen. Then they're gonna throw a bomb to Jameson Williams, just to prove a point.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Don't it? Yeah. Whatever. God dang it! All right. Well. Next segment is going to be our stat analysis of the week for the Analyst. and then we'll jump into our final segment of the podcast, being the college football winners and losers and some predictions for October 12th weekend. So, Ryan, I'll give it back to you, the analyst.
Yeah, so I'll fly through these. I actually added a little something this week. We're picking our QB ones or running back ones and wideout ones. I'm starting to pick some duds. We need to start looking at some duds too, calling people out that might could have ended up on the DB list, but for me, it's the statistical part of it. So, we've been talking a lot about bell cow running backs, and that's great. We've been seeing a lot of guys really toting the rock for their team, but we're finally starting to see, like we've been talking about, this has been a trend in the NFL where the first couple weeks, because there's not many preseason games or guys are holding out, Ayuk's finally coming back alive. You're seeing offenses like the Falcons finally getting in order. The Ravens are starting to actually throw the football. Joe Burrow's doing his thing where he's finally, coming out of the 3-game stretch like he just woke up out of bed and forgot he played 3 games. So it's nice to see the offensive starting to come alive. I think this is what we've talked about, and finally getting to see some type of passing offense. So we'll go ahead and start our QB1. This one was tough this week. You had Lamar and Burrow in the same game. Lamar had a great game. He had that one play that a lot of people are calling the play of the year where he fumbled, got it up, made Chuba Hubbard look like a small man, and then threw into the end zone for Likely. That was a great play. I had Lamar on the list. I also had Burrow having an even better outing as a quarterback, but he lost. So, but, all of these games that we just talked about, you got the college football, you got Sunday that happened, the London game, all of that. We kind of forgot about the Thursday night masterclass that Kurt Cobain's put out, baby. Yeah. That's our QB1 right there. He 42 of 58, 509 yards, and 4 touchdowns. I mean, he went crazy in that game, and that's kind of what a lot of people are looking for with Kirk Cousins on the Falcons, is finally starting to see him utilize the weapons that Arthur Smith, for God unknown, could not figure out in all of those years. Maybe it was Desmond Ridder. But our dud of the week. This one is pretty easy, and we've already kind of touched on it. Josh Allen, 9 of 30. That's pretty terrible. The note I had was literally what we talked about earlier. If another quarterback did this, we would be looking like the rapture was happening at AT&T Stadium. You would have everybody going and crazy, pitchforks coming out, GoFundMe's like we talked about. I mean, Josh Allen... If you actually watch this game, he played really bad, and my confidence in the Bills is starting to slip a little bit, like Jared pointed out. And like I said earlier, they need a wideout, man. They got to go find somebody. If it's Cooper, if it's Adams, it's just Coleman is not a wide receiver 1 right now, and that's pretty obvious. So moving on to the running backs, this was the toughest pick of the week because like I said earlier, we're finally starting to see some offensive play in the air, and I think that's what makes for a fun NFL league. The NFL is a passing league, we know that. So this was a tough pick, but I got a sleeper pick here, and I went with Tank Bigsby, man, being the running back 2 for the Jags. 13 carries, 101 yards, and 2 touchdowns. I wouldn't be shocked if you see the Jags continue to lose, that they move. There's a small whispers going on about Travis Etienne maybe getting moved to another team, especially because I think he's on a pretty sizable contract, if I'm not mistaken. But
he's still on a rookie deal.
He might be. He's got to be coming up. I mean, what is this? His 4th year in the NFL, so he's got to be coming up on 3rd or 4th. He's got to be coming up on a contract. But Bigsby is starting to do more with his carries down there in Jacksonville, and the Jags are kind of in a do or die situation where they got to start winning ball games and competing with the Texans if they want any chance of even remotely being in that division. And I don't really see it happening. So I wouldn't be shocked if we saw ETN also get moved at the deadline, even though it feels like I've said before that every receiver in America is on the trade deadline or on the trading block right now. I feel like every time I open my phone,
fire sale.
Yeah, every time I open my phone, it's like another receiver that Dallas is not going to go grab. So, as my dud for the week, it's actually Travis Etienne. He's been the fantasy football. He got drafted. I think like he was at least a running back 10. and he's just been a dud every week. He hasn't seen. I don't know if it's just he's not getting the touches anymore. They're falling behind where they can't really run the ball anymore. So we got to start airing that thing out. But I just haven't had much of a chance to watch the Jags just because they've played a lot of games. That it's like that Sunday game where you're watching another one and the Sunday or the noon slate ends and you're like, oh, the Jags played. Oh, and they lost. So I haven't had a ton of time to watch them. But, ATN just seems like something's going on there. And I'm not entirely sure what it is. Whiteout of the week. Even though they lost, this was the awesome game to watch. Probably the game of the noon slate. The Bengals and the Ravens game. Jamar Chase, 10 receptions, 193 yards, and 2 touchdowns against a division rival.
Not enough.
Not enough to win the game.
Not good enough.
They should have won that game, but they totally botched the. First off, they botched that field goal, and then all they did was the Ravens just turned around, gave it to Derrick Henry, and he ran 60 yards, and they kicked the field goal. Game's over. It was fun to T. Higgins, and I already mentioned Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase were all on fire. They were firing on all cylinders, but their defense is just so bad. I mean, this is the second week. I mean, the Commanders lit them up, and now you've got the Ravens lighting them up too. So, that was a tough watch for the Bengals. I know Burrow over there looking like a lesbian was pissed off. My dud of the week for the receivers. I was going to pick Olave, but one, I have a personal vendetta against Olave. I cannot stand him. I have him on my fantasy team, and it drives me nuts. But he was playing the Chiefs. He was, the Chiefs' defense is wonderful. They're magnificent. Probably one of the best defenses in the NFL. But he also lost his quarterback, so I will give him a pass on that. So I'm not going to go Olave. I'm going to go Marvin Harrison Jr., man. 2 receptions for 36 yards. The Niners' defense is good, don't get me wrong, but they haven't been as good as they have been like in the past. Last year, they were by far and wide one of the best defenses in the NFL. This year, they're struggling a little bit, but I need to see more out of Marvin Harrison based on what he was predicted to be as a pick. Everybody was talking about how he was going to be the next generational receiver. He's had a couple lines like that, but I need to see him do it against the Niners. He needs to do something else than just 2 receptions for 36 yards. And that's what everybody's talking about is like in the beginning of the games, he's a baller. He's he in that one game he had 4 receptions for 130 yards and 2 touchdowns in the first quarter. Yeah. But then he didn't have a reception past that. And that's like if you go look at his stats, like the second half he becomes non-existent. So I don't know what defenses are doing to him to make that happen, but he's got to break that barrier. So those are my stats of the week. Ran through that pretty fast. Any comments on any of those or any disagreements?
I got 2 no disagreements or anything, but I do got 2 names to highlight just because there's something about Joe Flacco, man.
Yeah.
There's something about Joe Flacco, man.
Joe Flacco, man.
Joe Flacco hitting 19 miles per hour on a run, throwing absolute freaking dots. I enjoyed watching him. We got red zone. That's one. Number 2 is Rico Dowdle. I thought he did a fantastic job versus Pittsburgh running the ball.
I almost picked him.
Those are my 2 highlights.
I almost picked him, but I really liked what I saw from Bigsby because he was kind of a sleeper last year, and he's an RB2. So
I think you have it right. I did. Yeah. I was like, Dowdle. 20 carries, midnight football. I thought it was impressive, and he kind of was the catalyst in that last drive. So those are my 2.
Yeah, sure. My I guess my 1 necessarily would be Drake London.
I almost picked him too.
Rough year last year without a quarterback, basically, and to see how he's kind of turned it around. That's been cool to see. And that game last week with the Falcons, it was Kirk Cousins and Darnell Mooney and Drake London show. That was insane. And then just a funny stat, and it changed once the game happened, but Joe Flacco on his, I think it was a 21-yard run, that was actually a longer run at the time than any Dallas Cowboy running back has had this season. So
Oh, God.
just to throw fuel on the fire for that.
Something
That
about Joe Flacco.
75-year-old Joe Flacco, had a 21-yard scamper, and the Dallas Cowboys, we're fighting for 6, and so I just thought that was a funny stat because anything like that gets brought up, it's like, oh, we got to dog the Cowboys somehow.
Oh yeah, got to. All right, well done. All right, well let's go into our college football segment to finalize the episode, and we can start off with our winners and losers from last week. So I think the way to start here, we'll start with the medical guy first, go to the analyst, and I'll finish off third. I definitely have a couple in mind, but one each, and then we'll move to the losers.
Sweet. So I think it's pretty obvious who my winner is going to be. It's going to be the old piggies from Arkansas, baby.
Come on, man.
Yeah, I needed to pull up that video of that one hog calling competition.
That got me so bad.
It's so terrible.
I found that, and I swear it was so bad.
But the Arkansas Razorbacks getting a big win over Tennessee, especially after the heartbreaking loss last week against A&M. This is very uncommon territory for the Hogs. Usually they get beat by A&M, and then we go on like a 4-game skid until we play Arkansas Pine Bluff and then win, and then maybe win one more against Vanderbilt. But this is honestly probably the biggest win that Arkansas's had in a minute, at least the last 3 to 4 years. So I'm gonna have them as winners this week. So
oh yeah,
Hogs.
baby.
Woo pig suey, baby.
Yeah.
How injured is their quarterback?
Don't know. We won.
Yeah. Yeah, when he went out of the game, I was like, oh.
Yeah, everybody was like, oh, shit.
Yeah.
And then it's like their backup's like true freshman. Like, not like a red shirt. It's like, hey, we're going to bring in this 18-year-old in one day in to face the Tennessee Volunteers. I was like, I know Gramps turned that TV off immediately when that guy went out. He's like, yep. Not finishing.
Yep.
Seen this before.
turned it off. We won. It's like, so I'll pass it on to y'all.
All right, the analyst.
Yeah, I won't take Jared's. I'll let Jared do his as an alma mater. I'm gonna go with Vandy, man.
Got to.
They haven't won since 1984. They haven't beaten Bama, I think is what the stat was. I don't know if that's 100% correct, but they haven't since
right.
Saban was at Bama. They haven't beaten Bama, and they've never beaten a top 1 team before. I got to give a shout out to their quarterback. He's from New Mexico State, transferred there. His name's I think Diego Pavilla or something. But he did not back down, dude. It was kind of like they were saying like his role model was Johnny Manziel, and that's like exactly how he played. Like, for lack of better terms, like Jalen Milroe, when they got the ball back, they just went right down the field and scored in like no time. Not in the first half, but in the second half, every time they got the ball, it felt like it was like Vanderbilt had to go down, took a while, do something, make a play, and then Bama will get the ball. And it was like when you're playing NCAA on your Xbox and you expect the defense to do something, and they give up 3 passes. That's what it was like for Bama. But man, that 4th down play he had where he launched it right down the seam of the field and scored, I think it was like 4th and 4. He was a gamer, man. He did everything he could to win that game, and they came out on top. And it really is funny to watch Saban eat some words after he said on College Game Day, like, oh, the easiest place to play is Vandy because I have more fans when I go there than they do. Which is probably true because Vandy's always been the bottom barrel of the SEC. So Vandy's getting some kind of spotlight there for once. They're my winner for the week.
Pass it back, Ags.
Yeah.
Pass it back. Howdy. How's it going? We are top 15 now. I warned y'all about Connor Wegman. I won't freak out too much. I'm not going to control too much. No, this was a great win for Texas A&M, 1,000%. Not a lot of people, including myself, knew that Connor Wegman was going to start this game, but obviously I'm going to say it for the clip. Texas A&M are my winners for this week. After a great 41-10 victory over the Missouri Tigers after all that shit talking that they were doing. They just played phenomenal in all facets of the game. That defense is looking very dangerous each and every week. They're kind of staying healthy. They got a bye week to recuperate, then they're off to Mississippi State. That should be another win for the Aggies. So looking good. They shot up, I think, 10 spots to number 15, and some say it's not high enough. Some say it's just about right. And that's okay. I'll probably be shattering the script a little bit about it on the episode coming up on Sunday. But this was a great win, man. I thought this is what I thought Wegman was when he came out there, and he was hitting, reading hit routes and RPOs. He was throwing the deep ball pretty accurately. I mean, attacking the verticals. The running was great, opening up the second half with a touchdown. I mean, all facets of the game. Texas A&M, great job. Gig 'em Aggies. Keep at it, because you won the game that you usually drop in the past. So just kind of keep at it. And man, if they had just beaten Notre Dame, they'd be sitting 6-0 right now. God, man,
they'd be, after this week. They'd be top 6, top 7.
Yeah,
dude.
All I'll say is I always told y'all after the Notre Dame game is that the scheme was there. It was just that it looked like Weigman was either sick or nerves or injured. I don't know, but he was missing throws. But like, I was watching the game, and I'm like, this is a perfect scheme for A&M, and their defense is legit. I like that Elko coach, man. I think he's a great fit for A&M. And what was funny was, I wasn't watching this game. I was kind of keeping track of it because I was doing something with my wife. And I saw the score at halftime, and I was like, man, the Aggies are beating the hell out of Missouri. And I was like, but knowing the Aggies, they usually let them come back or something in the second half. And then the first play from scrimmage in the second half was 75-yard run, and I was like, it's over.
That's when I went. Yeah. I was like, all right, time to go do my chores.
Yeah, the momentum... The momentum usually in the second half, like that's where you can come out and change the pace of the game. And A&M was just like squashed it and was like, no chance. This is over. So shout out A&M for 2.
Yeah, I hope they keep it up. They're on a roll right now. So, all right, let's get into our predictions for this weekend. Let's start with the Red River.
Are we not doing the losers?
We're not doing the losers, bro.
Whoa!
We'll make them quick. We'll make them quick. I'll go first with my loser. Tennessee, man. Tennessee for sure. Tennessee. I've been speaking very highly of them the last couple of weeks. I've said that they were kind of making a case to be like, hey, you've got UT, you got Bama, you got Georgia, but you also got us. To go out there and do what they did against Arkansas, I'm not totally discrediting Arkansas. Sorry, Jacob, but they're just not a top tier team in the SEC. And
100%.
100%
agree.
They haven't been in the past. I will say I do think they're going to be better going forward. Like there's some bright spots on their roster right now. Granted, y'all still have Bobby Petrino calling plays for you. I saw him on the sideline. Was like, what the hell? They brought him back after the whole scandal.
Just keep him away from the motorcycles and the blondes, and we're good, baby.
just keep him in the books, keep him on the film. So that was a tough loss for Tennessee. They had multiple excuses to win that game, especially with the quarterback for Arkansas going out, and they didn't do anything with it. So I will say they did lose some receivers, but they had multiple opportunities to win that game, and they just didn't do anything with it. So Tennessee is my first loser.
The medical guy.
All right, my first loser is going to be USC. I know they get a lot of publicity being kind of the only good team in the state of California and whatnot, but they dropped a dud against Minnesota, especially being ranked number 13 at the time. And, you get all the blind stat resumes that come out and show that, like, you get this big hire with Lincoln Riley. Basically they've got his family set up until, the rapture. And, and you just hear, like, these insane stories about, like, yeah, I'll go to UFC if you pay off my house, give me a private jet, unlimited funding, yada, yada, yada. and then you show that the coach before him has the same stats, more the higher touted bowl game wins, rivalry game wins, stuff like that. And it's just like, he was brought in to be, hey, bring USC back to USC, and it just hasn't been there. And it was the same last year. Defense wasn't great. Defense isn't great this year. And you're just seeing a big drop-off, and it's just disappointing in seeing them lose one to Michigan this year, who we don't know if Michigan's good or not. And then
especially after this week.
Yeah, and then beat Wisconsin fairly handedly, and then lose to Minnesota. And nothing against the Gophers, but USC shouldn't be losing to Minnesota.
No.
And so that's my loser of the week is USC.
One note on that, I just think it's Lincoln Riley bringing that Big 12 mentality, the old school Big 12, when the Big 12 had UT, OU, all those guys in it, of like, we can score 45 and win ball games. And that's just not how the Big 10 works. Yeah. The Big 10 is very defensive oriented, unless you're Ohio State. But a lot of Big 10 teams have really good defenses, and when you ask because USC is in the Big 10, right? They moved to the Big 10.
Yeah, it's like the Big 20 now, but yeah.
Yeah, it's like the Big 25. But the USC is entering that, and they don't have a defense to save their life. So anyway, that's all I got on that.
Yeah, I actually had Michigan as my loser of the week. It was between that and USC, but I just thought it was funny because you got like good personalities like Dave Portnoy out there, and he's a huge Michigan fan. And when their quarterback Jack Tuttle came into the game, it was like, go tune into the Michigan game because Jack Tuttle is giving a super spark to the Michigan offense. And I was just watching the game. I was like, all right, I guess I go see what this kid's about. No, not at all. Like, this dude could not throw the football. Like, I don't understand what the 3 seconds of hype was. He finished 10 of 18, 98 yards, touchdown to interception. They ran the ball pretty decently with Donovan Edwards, but I tell you who's a sleeper, and people forget that he transferred to Washington, is Will Rogers III.
Yeah.
He was at Mississippi State and was pretty good. I mean, he's above average, but for him to go to Washington, that's a good pickup for Washington, and they moved to 4-2. It's a good win for them. They kind of stay on the map a little bit, but this just knocked Michigan out of playoff contention. I don't think you'll see Michigan ranked again this year. Maybe in 2 weeks if they play a scrub team and they end up 5 or 6-2. But I don't think Michigan enters the top 25 again after this week.
Knowing the AP poll, they'll have them in there.
Whoa.
They shouldn't because they're awful offensively. I mean, they're basically Iowa on offense.
They can't throw the football. They cannot throw the ball.
Michigan's schedule coming up is tough. It's Illinois, Michigan State, Oregon, Indiana, Northwestern, Ohio State. So of those last 6, 1, 2, 3, 4 ranked teams. And we just saw how Illinois can sling it around.
Yeah.
So
I was going to say there's 3 losses in there, and it's Illinois, Oregon, and Ohio State.
Yeah, so that's going to be tough. It's going to be tough for them to come out of there without 4 or 5 losses. So
yeah.
Well, it seems. Go ahead.
I was just going to say we can't move on without also mentioning Bama, Missouri, and then Miami as well. I had Miami in there just because, like, how many more times are they going to get saved by the referees?
Oh, no, dude. That was a joke.
I won't go any further, but it was unbelievable. They had a legal man downfield on their touchdown, no call targeting. Granted, Cal ruined a big lead, but God, I was like, I could not believe my eyes. I was like, if that was any other team, there's flags all over that field. So that's the second week in a row that they got saved.
One God tier winner, or I guess 2. Going to give a big shout out to our Armed Forces football team, Army Navy.
Yeah, baby.
Both are going into this week 5-0.
Yeah,
that's
baby.
probably the first time since 1913 that both of those teams have gone into a season 5-0. So big shout out.
You
to
know
those
what's
two
funny
teams.
is the last time they were both 5-0 was 1945, and I sent
I
this
was
text to
close.
Jared, and I was like, "Huh, I wonder what was going on in 1945 for Army and Navy." For those of
Yeah.
you historians out there, that's World War II. So
Yes,
that's
yes.
when they were out there all and
Yes.
mighty. So
Yes.
Yeah.
So
I just
there
thought that was
some-
hilarious. I read that I read that tweet on, or I read that tweet on X, and I was looking at it. I was like, "That's freaking hilarious."
Yeah, some dogs.
They're also
on
2-0
those
during
teams.
that time.
Yeah.
Hey, here's an even cooler thing about Army and Navy being where they're at currently. And, if they continue on their trend of being a really good football team,
They
could
bid.
play each other in the conference championship, and then the following week play each other in the Army Navy game week twice in
Yeah.
a row.
That's wild.
That would be, and then a third time against Russia. No, but but seriously, like they could play each other back to back. We get double Army Navy weeks, which was awesome for college football. So hopefully that happens. But I was listening to it from a different guy talking about it. One of my college football guys that I listen to. But yeah, dude, that'd be exciting. But it's funny because I always seem in this episode to skip at least one segment. So that was that one, the winners and losers. So my fault to the audience. But now we'll move into college football predictions for this weekend. We have to. I know
The
it's
slate,
just
for sure.
This is like a one-horse open slate.
This
you
is
know?
an unfortunate part of my job during football season. Is like you always have a weekend where you're like, shit, I need COVID this week, so I can stay at the crib, man.
Oh fuck, I'm sick.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's funny because everybody was saying last week was like the flower picking weekend where you do go do stuff with your wife. That's actually what I did. And so last weekend was like the weekend where you get all your one-ups so you can sit on your ass on next Saturday. And it turned out last Saturday was like the all meta of college football chaos. So anyway,
Gap week for fans.
I'm gonna quick fire these, but y'all want to start with UT Oklahoma, the Red River. We're still calling it shootout.
That's right.
Yeah.
They got UT at minus 14.5, over under 49.5. I think this game is closer than people think, but I do think UT handles this game with ease. I think it's going to be 31-24 UT.
Okay, yeah. Medical guy?
I think this is going to be an ass whooping from the
go.
Longhorns.
Of course.
Now I think it's going to be 40-17, but I would not be surprised whatsoever that I know they're not Big 12 anymore, but they still got a little bit of that Big 12 DNA in them to where it always happens, and it's happened the last 10 years to where it's a mix between like UT, TCU, Oklahoma State. They'll be like, hell yeah. The wheels are rolling. They're highly ranked. They're undefeated. And then they go play some bullshit team like Iowa State and lose. And it happens every year. So it would not surprise me whatsoever if Texas just dropped an absolute dud and lost 31-12. And you're just like, bro, what the hell? And then they're back at, ranked number 14. And so it's like, yeah.
Yeah, I hope that would be hilarious. Honestly, I have UT winning this game 45-27. I think this is a high-scoring affair. It could be a lot closer. If you look at their past 6 or 7 matchups, it's basically all OU. But UT didn't have Ewers for most of that. They had Sam Ehlinger, who was not bad for Texas. But Ewers, I think, gives OU their own little welcome into the SEC, and they take this game by storm. I think Ewers has to prove once again that this is his team and not Arch Manning's. And as Oklahoma themselves, simply, in my opinion, are just not ready to compete with the top-ranked opponents with a true freshman quarterback. Their offense just can't keep up. I don't think this will be a super shootout for them, but definitely for Texas, which, ironically, we could see like a 15-12 game with this one.
That's why I picked
Oklahoma's
31-24 is because I'm like, throw out the record books.
Yeah,
you never know.
Yeah, you never know. There's no really predicting this game. If anybody got the the actual prediction right score wise, well, props to you. You're a wizard, Harry. Okay, Moving on to Ole Miss number 9 at LSU number 13. Game time 6:30 p.m. Spread is favoring Ole Miss at 3.5. Me personally, I have Ole Miss winning this game 38-30. I think after that USC game, LSU and USC played each other, and LSU lost that game, and now you have USC losing. I don't know. I just don't think LSU is a true ranked number 13 team. I think they're a whole lot worse, which is why I think Ole Miss escapes with this one, because me and Ryan also talked about it last week that we think Ole Miss are frauds. But I think this is one of those high-scoring SEC games where you have Jackson Dart and Ole Miss, their offense just kind of too much for LSU to handle. So I have them winning 38-30. The Analyst.
Well, I hate both of these teams. This is like you have the ignorant team in Ole Miss versus like the nasty team of LSU.
Just so
I can't.
angry.
You got the one coach that's like, and we're here again, and it's like, dude, shut up.
Gosh
darn
it.
You have. I guess we lost Jared, but I hate both of these teams.
Absolutely.
And there he is.
I did that on purpose.
He's so angry.
This game is hard to choose from because you've got the narrative like we talked about last week, where you have the Ole Miss frauds narrative that me and Jared talked about, and then Brian Kelly not being able to win big games narrative. So I'm going to go with the first narrative being bigger. I think that Ole Miss they are frauds. I'm going to go with LSU 28-21.
Ooh, nice. Yeah, I think I have Ole Miss 31-24 over this. I think Ole Miss is going to do, since they kind of lost to, they did lose to Kentucky. I think they're going to do everything in their power from here on out to just, show at least that, like, hey, our offense is good enough to be in a college football playoff platform. And I think I'm with y'all. I don't think they're both as good as the ranking shows, but I think LSU is definitely much worse than 13 than Ole Miss is at 9. It's just, I'm with y'all. I don't know how well Brian Kelly's going to have this team ready to go. And I just don't think they come out and win this ball game. I think Ole Miss takes this 31-24.
All right. So we got 2 Ole Miss, 1 LSU. All right. Oregon, number 3 versus number 2 Ohio State. This is arguably, outside of the Red River rivalry, the best game of the weekend. Shootout, excuse me.
Yeah.
So game time 6:30 as well. So we got 2 games that are going to be great at 6:30. Ohio State is favored in this spread, -3 away. This game is in Oregon, which is pretty interesting to see them being the favorite. But I guess it's because Dylan Gabriel's slow start. But I actually have – people are going to be so shocked about this, but I could get burnt. I actually have Oregon winning this game 29-21. And I don't know. I think Oregon puts it together against Ohio State and kind of shocks the critics with an incredible win at home. But I think Oregon's loss will come later to a weaker opponent, and I think that'll matter more than this win. I still think Ohio State's a great football team. I think they're a college football playoff team, no doubt. They'll probably win their conference, but I don't know. I just have this weird feeling that in Eugene, Oregon, the Oregon Ducks will come away with the victory.
Nice.
The medical. I'll give it to you. The medical.
Okay. So Oregon is the one team that I think is a fraud team.
Yeah.
I think
you could very well be right.
Everything they've shown me and the teams they've played have not been very good. And the one team that was good that they did play, Boise State, it was a snapshot finish. And then Oregon played a terrible Michigan State team last week, and yes, they did end up winning 31-10, but for a majority of that game, it was close, and Dylan Gabriel did not look very good. And I just think Ohio State's going to be more ready to play, and I think I think Ohio State's going to introduce Oregon to some of that Big Ten football, a little more defense, a little more calm, collected, methodical type of gameplay. And then I think it may seem like, it might be one of those where what game was it? It was a couple weeks ago, but it was basically like, I can't remember the game, but they were basically saying like, hey, if this team scores, then they get the ball at half. They could make. Oh, it was the Alabama Georgia game, which ended up being close, but where Georgia was down bad, and the commentator was like, if Georgia gets this ball rolling and scores right here, it'll make it 21-14 or 31-14, and then roll into the second half. They get the ball and score again, and then immediately threw a pick. I think that this game is going to be similar to that, to where like Oregon's going to be on that brink, and you're going to think, oh, okay, Oregon's close, yada yada, and then Ohio State does the whole thing where it's like, boom, they've scored 2 touchdowns in 7 minutes and the game's over. And so I think this is going to be a 34-21 Ohio State win. Just because I think Ohio State's better than them, and I think Oregon, I think they're more of a fraud team.
Yeah. The Analyst.
I would agree with that. I actually have, first off, Dylan Gabriel looks like the perfect Oregon quarterback.
Yeah.
Like, he just looks like he should be playing quarterback for Oregon. I don't know if it's because he kind of looks Hawaiian, but it's like when I watch him on Oregon's team and their bright neon yellow or bright neon atrocious green uniforms, it's like, yeah, that looks like the quarterback. Like, it's like the weird, he's left-handed for one.
What an idiot.
It just looks like odd, and you're like, yeah, it looks right in the Oregon uniform. But I expect this to be one of two things. It's either going to be a major scoring shootout, or it's going to be an absolute blowout by Ohio State, just because I do agree with Jacob. I said it earlier in the earlier weeks. I'm not sure how good Oregon actually is. This is going to be the test to see, like, okay, is Oregon actually that good, or are they not what we think they are? So I'm rooting for a shootout, so my prediction is going to be 48-41 Ohio State.
Love it.
But I am also going into it expecting it to be an absolute blowout from Ohio State as well. So rooting for the shootout, but kind of expecting the blowout.
Screw it. Ohio State 48, Oregon 7.
Yeah,
We're going with that. Blowout, baby. Ohio State's winning. I don't know what I'm thinking. But who knows? I don't know. We'll see. All right. Well, that wraps up our episode today. We had I'm so excited to watch this college football. I'll be shattering the script on Sunday with some other topics related to college football, as well as some NFL. Had a fun episode last time with the new setup, so it'll be interesting to see this week how everything plays out. We will be tweeting, and we will be paying attention, so you'll see content out for sure. So yeah, looking forward to it. This was the Stats and Scars episode, a feature of the Shatter the Script podcast. Every Thursday at 8 a.m. We got the Challenge the Script with EA College Football. This will be the College GameDay Matchup, Oregon and Ohio State, releasing every Friday at 8 a.m. And then you have the Shatter the Script main episode on Sunday mornings with just me, so for about an hour. So you can follow us at Shatter the Script on all platforms. We're releasing on Spotify and YouTube for video and audio. And then we got Apple Podcasts for just audio. But we will see y'all next week, and we thank y'all for joining.